Good morning, Sandy Levesque here with Think and Grow Rich Daily Hangout. Welcome to the Hangout. I hope that you're well wherever you're watching, or if you're watching this in the future. So if you're watching this and you'd like to be in the Hangout to read and or to participate in the discussion afterwards, then you're very welcome to. This is a half-hour Hangout. You just need to be in our Facebook group. And if you're in our Facebook group, then click on the first link, which I've just posted a few minutes ago, and it will bring you directly into the Hangout. So, people will be able to see you. So I just wanted to share something really quickly before we get going, and just to give some of you time to come in if you're going to come into the Hangout. Something just happened to me, actually, that I just find really interesting, and is really emblematic of why this Hangout, in my opinion, is a really useful thing to be tuning into, because I was actually on a big telecall last night with the work that I do, speaking to over 1,000 people live, and a lot more people will hear the replay of it today. And so one of the things that I was talking about was how I had gone from having a very poverty, lack-based consciousness, having been an anti-poverty campaigner, anti-money campaigner for 10 years or so, and how I'd sort of realized through serious illness that that wasn't actually, it wasn't what I'd come here to Earth to do. It sounds a bit dramatic, but that's just how it was. I realized I was always focusing on the problem instead of actually becoming part of the solution. What you focus on expands. A lot of personal development people talk about this. Napoleon talks about this through the whole book, Think and Grow Rich. If you're thinking about poverty, you're just going to become another person in poverty, and you're not really going to be able to change anything, in my opinion. So anyway, I had done this call, and in my excitement, I posted a video that I made a few months ago where I was walking through, we're at a friend's house, and I was shouting, "Show me the money," like in Jerry Maguire, the film. And there's a scene where Tom Cruise, the sports agent, has one client left, and this one client, and I won't give away the whole film, I'm sure you've seen it, it's been around for such a long time. The client is saying to him, "I want you to show me you really mean business, that you really care about having me as your client and really want me to do this." And so, he makes him shout, "Show me the money, show me the money," over and over until it's really passionate. So I did a video where I reenacted this for a joke, for a video as a part of the challenge I was doing for a whole year. And I did that, several months ago, almost a whole year ago. Anyway, I posted this after the call I had done, and this morning when I woke up and went onto Facebook, just before actually, I had a friend who I knew from the time I was anti-money, who commented on my post, the point of the film being that you only can receive the money when you're doing something you love and care about. And there was a real energy with this comment of, it's not just about the money, you have to do something that is meaningful. And I could really feel a bit of judgment there, in fact quite a lot of judgment, and I felt that a bit weird, to be honest, a bit like, my excitement was kind of dented, and I felt like a bad person. It sounds strange, but it's just what happened. And suddenly I remembered that, a lot of people, majority of people on planet Earth don't like money. They don't think it's a good thing. They think it's, causes lots of problems and clouds people's judgments. They have all these views about it, perspectives. And when you're willing to sort of go out there and say, I don't subscribe to this, I'm now willing to be prosperity consciousness, to have money, to be an example that it's possible. Like Wallace Wattles, an author from around the time of Napoleon Hill, he says, if you want to change poverty, you can't focus on the poverty or do charity work because you're perpetuating the same thing. The best way to change poverty is to plant seeds of wealth in the minds of the poor. And that's always stuck with me. And so I just wanted to say that if you're watching this Hangout or talking about it to friends, or people are judging you because you're openly changing your vibration with money, your perspective with money, then keep going. Don't let people put you down for it, or put you in a box, or make you feel like you're just a greedy money gold digger or something like that, which is kind of how I felt this comment was designed to make me feel. And if that's happening to you, then just keep going, because when you start to go against the grain, against the majority of people's thinking, people will come out of the woodwork and try to bring you back down to where you were before. And you don't have to let them do that. This book talks about that specifically. So just keep going, find people that will support you in what you're doing, and just realize that those people are they're like Agent Smith in the Matrix, trying to keep Neo back in where he was before. They're just different forms of Agent Smiths. One of my favorite films of all time. So all of that being said, I just felt called to share that in case anyone listening, any of you guys have had anything similar. Because sometimes we just need to know that it's okay to want to have money, to desire to have money, and to actually publicly be okay with that. All right, so let's go to the book. We finished chapter 6 yesterday, all about specialized knowledge, and today we're reading chapter 7, which is organized planning, the crystallization of desire into action. This is a really important chapter. So I'll just share my screen here, and I can't see the Q&A button, I'm afraid, guys. I'm not sure why that is. I can't see it anywhere, so I don't know how to enable it. I'm really sorry. I was checking before we started, but it just seems to have disappeared. So maybe that's a new thing Google's taken off, but we'll see. Definitely not on my my options that I have here as the host. Okay, so chapter 7, organized planning, the crystallization of desire into action, and it's the 6th step toward riches. You have learned that everything people create or requires begins in the form of desire, and that desire is taken on the first lap of its journey from the abstract to the concrete into the workshop of the imagination, where plans for its transition are created and organized. In chapter 2, you were instructed to take 6 definite practical steps as your first move in translating the desire for money into its monetary equivalent. One of these steps is the formation of a definite practical plan or plans through which this transformation may be made. You will now be instructed how to build plans which will be practical, viz. A. Ally yourself with a group of as many people as you need for the creation and carrying out of your plan, or plans for the accumulation of money-making. Use of the mastermind principle described in a later chapter. Compliance with this instruction is absolutely essential. Do not neglect it. B. Before forming your mastermind alliance, decide what advantages and benefits you may offer the individual members of your group in return for their cooperation. No one will work indefinitely without some form of compensation. No intelligent person will either request or expect another to work without adequate compensation, although this may not always be in the form of money. C. Arrange to meet with members of your mastermind group at least twice a week, and more often if possible, until you have jointly perfected the necessary plan or plans for the accumulation of money. D. Maintain perfect harmony between yourself and every member of your mastermind group. If you fail to carry out this instruction to the letter, you may expect to meet with failure. The mastermind principle cannot be obtained where perfect harmony does not prevail. Keep these facts in mind. First, you are engaged in an undertaking of major importance to you. To be sure of success, you must have plans which are faultless. Second, you must have the advantage of the experience, education, native ability, and imagination of other minds. This is in harmony with the methods followed by every person who has accumulated a great fortune. No individual has sufficient experience, education, native ability, and knowledge to ensure the accumulation of a great fortune without the cooperation of other people. Every plan you adopt in your endeavor to accumulate wealth should be the joint creation of yourself and every other member of your mastermind group. You may originate your own plans, either in whole or in part, but see that those plans are checked and approved by the members of your mastermind alliance. If the first plan which you adopt does not work successfully, replace it with a new plan. If this new plan fails to work, replace it in turn with still another, and so on, until you find a plan which does work. Right here is the point at which the majority of people meet with failure, because of their lack of persistence in creating new plans to take the place of those which fail. The most intelligent man living cannot succeed in accumulating money, nor in any other undertaking, without plans which are practical and workable. Just keep this fact in mind, and remember when your plans fail, that temporary defeat is not permanent failure. It may only mean that your plans have not been sound. Build other plans. Start all over again. Thomas A. Edison failed 10,000 times before he perfected the incandescent electric light bulb. That is, he met with temporary defeat 10,000 times before his efforts were crowned with success. Temporary defeat should mean only one thing: the certain knowledge that there is something wrong with your plan. Millions of men and women go through life in misery and poverty because they lack a sound plan through which to accumulate a fortune. Henry Ford accumulated a fortune, not because of his superior mind, but because he adopted and followed a plan which proved to be sound. 1,000 people could be pointed out, each with a better education than Ford's, yet each of whom lives in poverty because they do not possess the right plan for the accumulation of money. Your achievement can be no greater than your plans are sound. That may seem to be an axiomatic statement, but it is true. Samuel Insull lost his fortune of over $100 million. The Insull fortune was built on plans which were sound. The business depression forced Mr. Insull to change his plans, and the change brought temporary defeat because his new plans were not sound. Mr. Insull is now an old man. He may consequently accept failure instead of temporary defeat. But if his experience turns out to be failure, it will be for the reason that he lacks the fire of persistence to rebuild his plans. No man is ever whipped until he quits in his own mind. This fact will be repeated many times, because it is so easy to take the count at the first sign of defeat. James J. Hill met with temporary defeat when he first endeavored to raise the necessary capital to build a railroad from the east to the west. But he too turned defeat into victory through new plans. Henry Ford met with temporary defeat, not only at the beginning of his automobile career, but after he had gone far toward the top. He created new plans and went marching on to financial victory. We see men and women who have accumulated great fortunes, but we often recognize only their triumph, overlooking the temporary defeats which they had to surmount before arriving. No follower of this philosophy can reasonably expect to accumulate a fortune without experiencing temporary defeat. When defeat comes, accept it as a signal that your plans are not sound. Rebuild those plans and set sail once more towards your coveted goal. If you give up before your goal has been reached, you are a quitter. A quitter never wins, and a winner never quits. Lift this sentence out, write it on a piece of paper in letters an inch high, and place it where you will see it every night before you go to sleep, and every morning before you go to work. When you begin to select members for your mastermind group, endeavor to select those who do not take defeat seriously. Some people foolishly believe that only money can make money. This is not true. Desire, transmuted into its monetary equivalent through the principles laid down here, is the agency through which money is made. Money of itself is nothing more than inert matter. It cannot move, think, or talk, but it can hear when a person who desires it calls it to come. Planning the sales of services. The remainder of this chapter has been given over to a description of ways and means of marketing personal services. The information here conveyed will be of practical help to any person having any form of personal services to market, but it will be of priceless benefit to those who aspire to leadership in their chosen occupations. Intelligent planning is essential for success in any undertaking designed to accumulate riches. Here will be found detailed instructions to those who must begin the accumulation of riches by selling personal services. It should be encouraging to know that practically all the great fortunes began in the form of compensation for personal services, or from the sale of ideas. What else except ideas and personal services would one not possessed of property have to give in return for riches? Broadly speaking, there are two types of people in the world. One type is known as leaders, and the other as followers. Decide at the outset whether you intend to become a leader in your chosen calling or remain a follower. The difference in compensation is vast. The follower cannot reasonably expect the compensation to which a leader is entitled, although many followers make the mistake of expecting such pay. It is no disgrace to be a follower. On the other hand, it is no credit to remain a follower. Most great leaders begin in the capacity of followers. They became great leaders because they were intelligent followers. With few exceptions, the man who cannot follow a leader intelligently cannot become an efficient leader. The person who can follow a leader most efficiently is usually the person who develops into leadership most rapidly. An intelligent follower has many advantages, among them the opportunity to acquire knowledge from their leader. The major attributes of leadership. The following are important factors of leadership. First of all, unwavering courage, based upon knowledge of self and of one's occupation. No follower wishes to be dominated by a leader who lacks self-confidence and courage. No intelligent follower will be dominated by such a leader very long. 2. Self-control. The person who cannot control themselves can never control others. Self-control sets a mighty example for one's followers, which the more intelligent will emulate. 3. A keen sense of justice. Without a sense of fairness and justice, no leader can command and retain the respect of their followers. 4. Definiteness of decision. The person who wavers in their decisions shows that they are not sure of themselves. They cannot lead others successfully. 5. Definiteness of plans. The successful leader must plan their work and work their plan. A leader who moves by guesswork without practical, definite plans is comparable to a ship without a rudder. Sooner or later they will land on the rocks. 6. The habit of doing more than paid for. One of the penalties of leadership is the necessity of willingness upon the part of the leader to do more than they require of their followers. 7. A pleasing personality. No slovenly, careless person can become a successful leader. Leadership calls for respect. Followers will not respect a leader who does not grade high on all of the factors of a pleasing personality. 8. Sympathy and understanding. The successful leader must be in sympathy with their followers. Moreover, they must understand them and their problems. 9. Mastery of detail. Successful leadership calls for mastery of details of the leader's position. 10. Willingness to assume full responsibility. The successful leader must be willing to assume responsibility for the mistakes and the shortcomings of their followers. If they try to shift this responsibility, they will not remain the leader. If one of their followers makes a mistake and shows themselves incompetent, the leader must consider that it is they who failed. 11. Cooperation. The successful leader must understand and apply the principle of cooperative effort and be able to induce their followers to do the same. Leadership calls for power, and power calls for cooperation. These are two forms. There are two forms of leadership. The first and by far most effective is leadership by consent of and with the sympathy of the followers. The second is leadership by force, without the consent and sympathy of followers. History is filled with evidences that leadership by force cannot endure. The downfall and disappearance of dictators and kings is significant. It means people will not follow forced leadership indefinitely. The world has just entered a new era of relationship between leaders and followers, which very clearly calls for new leaders and a new brand of leadership in business and industry. Those who belong to the old school of leadership by force must acquire an understanding of this new brand of leadership cooperation, or be relegated to the rank and file of the followers. There is no other way out for them. Okay, we'll just read down to there. The relationship of employer and employee, or of leader and follower, in the future will be one of mutual cooperation, based upon an equitable division of the profits of business. In the future, the relationship of employer and employee will be more like a partnership than it has been in the past. Napoleon, Kaiser Wilhelm of Germany, the Tsar of Russia, and the King of Spain were examples of leadership by force. Their leadership passed. Without much difficulty, one might point to the prototypes of these ex-leaders among the business, financial, and labor leaders of America who have been dethroned or slated to go. Leadership by consent of the followers is the only brand which can endure. People may follow the forced leadership temporarily, but they will not do so willingly. The new brand of leadership will embrace the 11 factors of leadership described in this chapter, as well as some other factors. The person who makes this the basis of their leadership will find abundant opportunity to lead in any walk of life. The Depression was prolonged largely because the world lacked for leadership of this new brand. At the end of the Depression, the demand for leaders who are competent to apply the new methods of leadership has greatly exceeded the supply. Some of the old types of leaders will reform and adapt themselves to this new brand of leadership, but generally speaking, the world will have to look for new timber for its leadership. This necessity may be your opportunity. Okay, so we'll stop reading now on page 95. Cool. So something I wanted to share quickly about this topic is a concept that I learnt of about a year and a half ago, which I literally have written out on a piece of cardboard, and I have it in my one of my rooms, and I see it every single day. And it's to cultivate an expectation of leadership. You know, like Napoleon here is saying, you need to be willing to be a follower and be a leader. And I think it's really important sometimes when you're new with something, or you feel like you're not really a success, or for whatever reason you're just not having the kind of success that you would like to be having, it can be easy to feel like you're just never going to be a leader. You know, I say this from personal experience. And I heard this concept, and it was really to realize that there's nothing stopping you from being a leader. Like, literally nothing. You know, unless you just are some kind of evil Knievel who and even then, you know, evil people have found their way to becoming leaders in this world. But there's nothing that is stopping you watching this right now, listening to this right now, from becoming a leader. Nothing. And cultivating the expectation of it, it's a bit of a mouthful, is really understanding that, and almost like putting your stake in the ground, saying, I am going to be a leader in this, no matter what it takes, and I am not stopping until I am, you know. And that can sound a bit, you know, definite and a little bit too fixed for some people, and that's fine. All I know is that having that kind of determination, in the same way that people who've climbed massive mountains determined that they were going to climb to the top of Everest, or to the top of the, you know, whichever mountain it was in the Andes or somewhere, that they were going to do it. That was their destination. You know, you set your sail for a specific destination. Otherwise, if you don't do that, you're just kind of putting your, you know, you're just starting to walk up the mountain with no idea of where you're going. And the cool thing is, it doesn't have to be like this treacherous, long, tedious journey of climbing to the mountain, you know. It can actually be an amazing, magical journey of starting to see your dreams come true, you know. I think that's one of the best feelings in the world. And it doesn't have to be this drudging thing, this grueling journey. You know, parts of it might feel grueling, but it's just so magical when you start to see it come to fruition. Like, for example, for myself, speaking on this call that I spoke to at the start of the Hangout, I've dreamt about that for over a year, and to actually be on it, it just was such an amazing feeling, because I've imagined myself being on it for a long time, and it was a real milestone for me to do that. So, you know, that's one of the best feelings ever. I went to sleep massively excited, I woke up massively excited, and, you know, that wouldn't be possible if I hadn't set that intention, that target. So when you set the targets, it's also a way of actually becoming an alchemist and starting to create your reality according to what you would like, not just letting it happen, you know, laissez-faire. And so cultivating the expectation of leadership is just simply realizing that you're going to be a leader in whatever it is you do, and that's just the only outcome you're going to accept. And you know, and when you do that, sometimes it will involve being a follower as well, very often in fact, because if you're going to look at people leading in the field you're choosing to be in, you need to be able to look at what they're doing, to be willing to learn from them, to not have an ego about being a follower. And, you know, there's a great TED Talk, How to Start a Movement. In fact, I did a whole hangout on this last week, about a week ago, which you're welcome to go and watch. It's on my blog at exquisitefreedom.com. And I showed this video because it's such a great example of what Napoleon's talking about. It's a video of a guy who starts dancing in a field on a hill, and he's dancing and dancing, and then someone comes along and dances with him. And the TED Talk person is saying, well, now we have the start of a movement, because we have the leader, we have the first follower, and then other people come and start dancing as well. And eventually, half the hill is dancing on the hill because they don't want to be left out. And you literally have a movement that's been created. And the whole point of the TED Talk is that, you know, we put a lot of glory on the leader, but actually it takes a lot of guts to be a follower, to be willing to not have that ego, to follow someone else and what they're doing, and that you actually become a leader by doing that. and you're just as important really as the person that took that first step. So there's a beauty in being willing to follow, because you will help create the things that you want to create in the world, whatever those changes are, whatever the things you would like to see. When you start to be a follower as well as being a leader, the two go hand in hand. You can't, if you separate yourself completely from becoming a leader, i.e., you don't see yourself as a leader, you think that that's way off, you think that there's no way that you'll ever be considered a leader, and I actually have been there. You're actually pushing yourself away from becoming a leader. We push ourselves away from it because we see it as a totally different thing from us. So if you're doing that, then I encourage you to cultivate an expectation of leadership. It could be just writing that concept out on a piece of paper. I just literally wrote on a piece of cardboard in big black letters, cultivate an expectation of leadership. And I have to thank, it was John Lavinia who gave me this concept on a call. Actually on the call that I was on last night, a long time ago. He spoke about this, and I decided that I was going to cultivate that expectation. It's like you just start to expect that at some point, you don't know exactly when, you are going to be a leader in whatever it is you do. And I can say from personal experience that it's true. I would not have been invited onto a call with over 1,000 people listening if it wasn't for the fact that I had become a leader and had decided to become a leader. And this is just the beginning, really. So I hope that's all helped you. The main things to take away from today's reading: decide that you're going to be a leader, cultivate the expectation that that's going to be where you're going, and that that's just where you're going. That's where you're hiking to, this magical journey. And be willing in that process to also follow others who have become leaders in what they do, because that will help you to make that same journey. It's like being willing to step in someone else's footprints in the snow. If you're ever in a really snowy place, it's easier to walk along the footsteps that someone else has already created in the snow than it is to just start from scratch. It's literally less physical work. And it's the same thing with becoming a follower. You start to model and learn from people who have already walked that way. Doesn't mean you have to become them or do exactly the same way as them, but that's part of your toolbox, is walking along that same path. All right, so thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for being part of this Hangout. I really appreciate you. I'm very grateful for you all. If you have any comments or feedback about today's Hangout or any experiences you would like to share, then leave them in our Facebook group. We'd love to hear from you. And I shall see you tomorrow at the same time. Have a great day, and let's go out and become leaders and cultivate that expectation. I'll see you tomorrow.